In today's note, we're going to be looking at the volume of prisms and pyramids. So in our last note, we looked at the surface area. Today, we're going to look at volume. And volume is the amount of space a 3D object takes up. So it's a little bit different from surface area because surface area is if you lay it flat on the ground. Volume is the amount of space in general, or 3D space the object takes up. So for the first one, we want to determine the volume of the prism or pyramid. So here we have a rectangular prism, and what we're going to do is we're going to use our formula sheet, again the one that we were given, and you can see here a rectangular prism. The first column you can see is surface area, if we see at the top on the right here. The second column is volume. So you're going to go down to rectangular prism, go over to the volume column, and we see here that volume is, for a rectangular prism, it's actually quite simple. Volume equals length times width times height. So these are the same measurements from our last diagram, or from the last lesson, but now we're solving for volume. Again, we're going to label our sides, length, width, and height. Again, it doesn't matter because you can orientate this rectangular prism in different directions or different ways, and the length, width, and height might get mixed up, but in the end, based on the operations, it's not going to make a difference. So V equals length, which is 12, times width, which is 8, times height, which is 6. And this just becomes one calculation, 12 times 8 times 6. And we get 576. And because it's volume, we're still using the units, so it's inches, but in this case, it's cubed. Or in other words, we're multiplying 3 units together, inches times inches times inches. So that's the one difference as well, or another difference, sorry, between volume and surface area, is that volume uses units cubed. And cubed means to the power of 3. So we're not cubing this unit or cubing this number, it's just the inches cubed is just the measurement, or the units. Kind of like meters cubed or feet cubed. So that's the volume for a prism, or a rectangular prism. For B, the volume of a triangular prism, again, we're going to go to our formula sheet. We can see a triangular prism at the bottom. Go over to the volume side, and we have volume is equal to, either one is fine, it's just different representations. We're going to use base times length times height, or B times L times H, divided by 2. And we're going to use our measurement here to help us figure out what to label. So we can see the B is on the bottom, we have A and C on the sides, we have H as our height, but now we're looking for the L. Right, so L is, again, remember this line, or the height of this triangle, which is different from the H. But what we see here is that our triangle, I'll draw it in red actually, our triangle here, similar to the last one, when we draw the line straight down, it does form a right angle triangle. So I can use Pythagorean theorem, which we talked about in the last lesson, to help me find that missing side. So I'm going to draw my triangle, or just the small right angle triangle, what we did in red, draw it off to the side. We know the one measurement is 8. Again, because the triangles, the two sides A and C are the same, this triangle actually splits the bottom up nicely into 2 sections, or to 2 equal sections. So that means it's 4 and 4. So the base of the one triangle is 4. And now we're trying to solve for L, or this missing height here. I'm just using L because if you look to the right, that's what the picture is using, so I don't want you to get confused about different numbers or different letters. So we're using the Pythagorean theorem to solve for this missing side. If you refer back to the lesson from yesterday, L is a leg, or represents one of the legs. It's not the hypotenuse, that's the 8. So if we're solving for a leg, we're going to use a squared equals c squared minus b squared. So just rearranged of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Again, go back to the lesson from yesterday and it's at the end. So a squared is going to be my unknown. I'll just change it to L squared for my leg. C squared is, C represents the hypotenuse, so the longest side is 8, minus 4 for my other leg, so 4 squared. L squared we have, so 8 squared is 64, minus 4 squared, which is 16. So we get L squared equals 48. To get L by itself, we have to take the square root of the other side. So L equals the square root of 48, which if we round it is 7. 6.9, but we'll round it up to 7. So that means that this height here is 7. Now that I know that missing piece, I can now use my volume formula. So V equals base, or B, which is 8, times L, which was 7, times height, which is 10, all divided by 2. And this just becomes a simple calculation. I'm going to still break it down into 2 parts. I'm going to do the top part first, just so I don't get confused with any calculations. So 560 divided by 2. So I get 280, and then the units are feet, and then it's cubed because it's volume. So that is the volume of my triangular prism. And lastly, for a square-based pyramid, I'm going to go over to my formula sheet again. So my volume formula, V equals base squared times height divided by 3. Again, we see the 2 different ones. It's the same thing. If I'm dividing by 3 or multiplying by a third, it's the same idea. I'm going to label my sides. So in this case, 10 times 10. These are my bases. And this 15 is my H. I don't have an S for the side, but that's okay. I don't have to worry about it. I don't need it for the volume formula. So here, when I plug it in, so my base squared, so I have 10 squared, or my B, and then multiplied by 15, and then divided by 3. So we have 10. So 10 times 10 is 100 times 15. So again, I'm just simplifying the top first and then the bottom just to make sure that there's no calculation errors. If you're comfortable with your calculator, you can do that all in one step. 1500 divided by 3 is 500. And units again are centimeters, and because it is volume, it is centimeters cubed. So that is the volume of our square-based pyramid. So again, we looked at the volume of prisms and pyramids. We used our formula sheet that you see to the right. You can get that in the course content, or if you just Google formula sheet for surface area and volume, you should be able to find it. Again, we had to use Pythagorean theorem, so if you're a little bit unfamiliar with that or you don't remember that from grade 9, go back to the last lesson. We had a small little review at the end.